Very excited to be here with a fellow 180byTwoer, Leland Morris.
Great to be here.
Our VP of Professional Services. And we're going to be talking about intent. The focus being, what it means and how it's used. 180byTwo has a product, Echo, but I think in general, intent is something that a lot of B2B marketers are looking at as an option for their B2B marketing. So we thought it was a great topic to discuss today on our first inaugural Lunch and Learn.
Absolutely.
So Leland, let's just start out with defining what is intent.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think a lot of people look at, especially in the B2B world, of intent just being an indication of interest for a specific subject or product or service. But I think you have to dig a little bit more deeply and really look at intent as a signal for both timing and context. And leveraging both timing and context to really dig into what are these organizations interested in now, and how does that relate to the product or service that I, as a marketer, am bringing to market.
I think that's very, very true. Timing, I mean, I love that. I love the way we kind of look at intent and timing, because that's what it's supposed to be used for. When you try to identify if a company is truly in market for a particular technology solution. That's why we are so fascinated with intent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, the traditional view of marketing is to define your total addressable market and begin to deploy messaging out, however you choose to do so, to all of the potential targets within that market set. But I think, with the advent of technology and all of the different data products that we build or have access to, we can now dig into building kind of a striated approach to understanding within our market who's interested now and what's the context of that interest. And that's a really powerful tool to have at your disposal.
Absolutely, and I think the interesting thing about intent is that we're trying to identify a specific type of research being done by a company. And again, as we've talked about and you've probably have seen, a company is made up obviously of multiple employees. So when you're looking at B2B marketing versus potentially consumer marketing, and that is the major difference. Companies, there are a lot of decision makers that are involved in a buying process. So understanding the intent from a macro level is not as easy. And a lot of these technology sales can take a long time, 8 months, 12 months.
Absolutely.
So from the moment you see a lead at an event or coming in and consuming some of your content, from the time that sale takes place, there's a lot in between.
Absolutely.
So I think when we talk about timing, it's not just are they in market in general, but it's also timing within that sales process. And as they move and they consume content. And if we see a spike at a certain time as they are going through that process, that's when you want to determine the message.
Right.
And I think that's also something we're going to talk a little bit about when we talk about context.
Yeah, and I think, to dial back to context for a second, I think a great example of the importance of deeply understanding context is, let's look at cybersecurity as a great example. You could have companies that you are assuming that they're interested in cybersecurity at large. You can send that messaging out and it can totally bounce or fail. And it's because you didn't really dig into the context of security that they're looking for. You might have a company that's more interested in insider threat versus dark web monitoring. If you're sending the guys that are interested in dark web insider threat messaging, it's not going to resonate. So the importance of that context cannot be overstated relative to understanding how do you score, which we're going to get into, but also how do you build that content stream, again, relative to the context of interest at that target organization.
Absolutely. So let's get into that more scoring. I think that the interesting thing about intent is that looking at a makeup of a company, and the fact that how large they are, what industry they're in, how many decision makers do they really have at that company for a given purchase decision. Understanding that profile is really important when identifying the scoring that you use. I mean, there's a lot of signals that can spew out of a given company. The research they do online, the search they're doing, the conferences they're going to. These are all intent signals. But when you package it and try to say, hey, is this company in market? The goal would be to say, okay, this company has this makeup. They're going to peak and they're going to show intent when they reach this type of intent signal and this type of over-indexing.
Right.
I think that's not always talked about as, do you understand the overall company in general while you're scoring them?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we talk about, a larger company might have 1,000 total headcount, but for a given product or service, there might only be 50 people within the organization that would deal with that purchase process or procurement. So if you're looking at what are the signals emanating out of that company relative to or as a ratio of, in comparison of functional area headcount, all of a sudden that, again, just more deeply enables your ability to score the target, figure out the context, the right context, and then that directly unfolds right into timing, the element of timing. So
yeah, I think that's something that also we touched upon is the site level. Like we could look at a company's size, the industry they're in, and then even some of these large companies looking at the actual location that is showing the intent. Very large companies like Oracle, HP have offices all over the country. So to being able to understand that the office in San Francisco or the office in Texas is showing this intent, and quite frankly, that office in Texas, is where all the engineers are. I mean, that is a very important factor when looking at a score. And I think that's something a lot of marketers should be asking is, do you look at intent at a site level? Do you understand a company's makeup? And those are things that you should kind of qualify your partners when looking at the array that are out there. The last thing I think that I wanted to talk about, and I'd love your opinion on, is the omni-channel aspect of intent, and the fact that in today's world where ad tech and martech are kind of joining together in this new term that I just heard called mad tech, context is key.
Context is so
key.
key.
Messaging that we should be sending clients when they show intent.
Absolutely.
That's the amazing world we live in today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of all of this technology, we're all still just people, and we're still trying to sell our products and services to other people that have a desire, an interest, a need, whatever. But the way we communicate across different channels should be different. The way we communicate with our peers on LinkedIn is very different from the messaging or communication that we're open to on Facebook. Compared to a video ad, compared to an audio message, compared to an email. So again, dialing back into intent and context and timing gives us a greater understanding of how to iterate our messaging and most appropriately use each of the channels that we're building into our communication strategy. And I think that's a really important piece that more and more, especially in B2B, we're seeing more B2B marketers understand that you have to, the buying process isn't linear, and you have to be in front of your audience in every way possible so that you're giving that audience the opportunity to engage in the way they want to engage. And to do that successfully, you really have to understand what's the right voice, what's the right message per channel, so that again, that message resonates and you generate the engagement you're after. Critical.
Absolutely, and to kind of put it a nail in the coffin on this one, like we see a lot of clients, frankly, looking to have that messaging done in their marketing automation platform and social on LinkedIn. Marrying your social strategy as well as your digital programmatic with your email, it's a great thing. You see metrics time and time again where all of the metrics kind of raise when you join them together, and data is the one thing that seems to combine all of a CMO's marketing strategy. I mean, right now, from what I'm hearing, CMOs have anywhere from 15 to 20 different platforms they're managing, from their social media management platform, their DMP, their DSP, all these other platforms, the CRM system, their marketing automation platform.
CDP.
The CDP.
How many other acronyms can we throw
I love
in?
the alphabet soup. The thing is, like we inventory and the being able to get in front of them is so easy. Data and having those insights of Echo is the thing that seems to connect to these things, the common language that connects a marketer's strategy. And it becomes especially very important when you're dealing with your own data, your own first-party data first, and then trying to extrapolate intent upon that. So, I mean, it's becoming more important. And I would also say that Echo and Intent, our product, it seems to also flow into ABM.
Absolutely.
And again, that's also the big thing that everybody talks about is account-based marketing. But Echo or Intent kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the traditional view was to output a targeted account list based on understanding your buyer's criteria and matching those criteria to the firmographics or technographics that exist within a company.
Yep.
now you can, I don't want to say automate, but you can gain that intent level insight, output a company list based on intent, and use that as the basis of your ABM strategy. And when we think
activating is then key.
And then
so
activation.
Then we talk to the multi-channel. That's where I was kind of bringing it all home. Is that ABM is almost the activation of a good intent strategy.
Absolutely, and we should talk about too, and maybe a topic for another day, but how does the layering of intent with ABM then accelerate your MQL to SQL continuum, or whatever that process or set of definitions is that you have relative to moving a lead from contact to SQL, by layering these pieces of data together in this great understanding of timing and context, how does that accelerate your process? What does that mean for your budgets, for your efficiencies, for your team? A lot of ripple effect there when we talk about these things working together.
Absolutely. So I think that I'll call it for today. Very excited to be doing more of these. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing more of these on LinkedIn Live now that we are officially approved. If you can guess where we are right now, you're happy to kind of join us and kind of see this live as it's happening. And feel free to write in the comments on where you think we might be right now.
Yeah, you get it right, we'll take you out to lunch next week. So leave it in the comments where you think we are.
Next week, the next month I should say, the next topic is going to be more around ID and B2B ID activation, and understanding that in this omni-channel world, it's really the ID that really matters when trying to attack a certain channel and a certain strategy. So that kind of goes into ABM as well as ID activation.
Absolutely.
You want to give a little tease to that, or just want to save it?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me if you wanted to get a drink, but yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to talk about the narrative out there right now is what happens when the cookie crumbles, right? So
absolutely.
We want to talk about how we can help empower marketers to leverage additional identifiers, stitch those identifiers to whatever the ad ID set is that they're working with. How do we move those identifiers across platforms and make it really versatile for them, and alleviate that fear they have just around their cookie-based world right now? Not that hard.
Absolutely, no, not hard at all. But the IP and the MAID or the device ID are becoming very, very important aspects, and I think B2B marketers are catching up to that.
Yep.
I think like everything else, it's just a matter of time.
That's right. That's right.
So happy to call our first one, and thank you guys for joining us. And again, if you have any questions or comments or ways we can improve, please share them.